So it's been just over a year since I started this journey, and the reason that I'm making this video is because I feel like creative freelancers or entrepreneurs in this space really only get shown their ideal scenarios when they get started.
How much money you make?
I don't know, 70,000 last month.
You see so much content out there saying how to make $100,000 a year, how to scale a massive brand, how to get financial freedom. I think it's great to have goals, but I don't think that the reality is shown enough, which can actually make creatives feel off track and demotivated when they first get started. So I just wanted to make this video to share my experience as a first-year freelancer, how much I actually made, and some of the struggles and the lessons that I learned. Number one, and this is really important, this is just my personal journey. It's the way I've shown up in the past year. It's the things that I've done and the things that I haven't done to create revenue. Number two, at the beginning of 2024, I went through some pretty intense personal things, and I'd be lying if I said that it did not affect me and my work for the better part of 4 months, because it did. That's life. No matter who you are, things are gonna happen, life is gonna happen. And so it's pretty important to keep that in mind, is that it's not going to be perfect. So in my first year as a freelance editor and videographer, I made around $45,000. Now, to be honest, it's definitely not as much as I wanted. I made less than I did at my previous salaried position. And part of me does feel like I could have done a lot more to have a better year. But with that being said, I'm still super proud of myself, like especially given the things that I went through this year. You know, I can still remember the fear I had taking the leap of actually leaving my job and crunching the numbers to see how long I could live off my savings if I didn't make any money at all. Of course, that didn't happen, but thankfully, you know, I actually made a living for myself. And I had the freedom to work when I wanted and how I wanted. And I definitely don't take that for granted. But by no means, you know, was this process easy. And there were definitely months that were very slow where I had a lot of fear about how I would be able to pay my bills.
Anxiety is pretty high today. Just crunching numbers, just having a slow month and just not feeling like I've established a business. You know, I've worked on some projects, like looking at the future and what I need to make to survive. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get there. Like, the fear is real.
Now, I was certainly a bit all over the place in my first year as far as how I made money. You know, in fact, when I started my business, I thought I was going to operate more as like a production company and film commercials for small businesses and things like that. But I quickly realized how much I actually hate the sales process of trying to get a company to, you know, see value in what I was doing. And so I decided to focus on video editing. And I also love the idea of just not having to haul gear to different locations and travel, but, you know, instead get to work from anywhere in the world and integrate with directors and companies who essentially already had a need for video editing, and I didn't have to sell them as hard. So this really became my main target after a few months of trying to operate as a production company. There's a really important lesson in all of that, and that is just getting out there and getting started. Like, if you just sit with the idea in your head, you're not gonna have clarity on anything. You know, you can always pivot after you've started, but if you're just standing still, you're not gonna go anywhere. So the biggest portion of my income came from video editing, which was around 74% of my total income. Now, this included everything from small brand commercials to social media reels, big brand commercials, podcasts, wedding edits, and a few productions that I actually did on my own and then edited myself. Now, most of this work came from networking and referrals. And as I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of sales at all. So I knew that I needed another way to generate leads. You can't just wait for the work to come with you. You still have to take action. So luckily, I'm a people person, so networking, you know, comes pretty easy to me. And, you know, I did this through various methods. I got into some coaching programs. I just had some mutual Instagram connections that I reached out to. Just putting myself out there in general on social media, even just for my family and friends, you know, and having people who know me refer me to other people since they knew that I was looking for work. And then essentially, once I got a few projects under my belt, I really focused just on doing an incredible job and delivering so that my clients would refer other people my way. I think that's really important. So I also made a point to, you know, take care of repeating clients and offer them better rates in exchange for more consistent work. Now, I do want to make one thing very clear. I have been in the content creation industry in one way or another for almost a decade. So through my past content, past relationships, past coworkers, I had already established myself and my expertise in some way or another. And it's probably why networking works so well for me. You know, I already had a proof of concept in the work that I had done as an employee for other companies and just my own content that I had created over the years. Now, the next biggest portion of my income was from being a camera operator, and this made up about 11% of my freelance work. All of this came in the form of filming weddings as a second shooter. Now, I really did not have intentions of filming weddings at all, but the money is really good in this industry, and it is definitely more consistent and reliable as an additional form of income. So as a second shooter for weddings, you can expect to make anywhere from $40 to $80 an hour or more, depending on your level of experience and location. Now, the next portion of my income, which was around 8% of my total revenue, was from full-scale productions. So these are projects where I produced, directed, filmed, and edited everything. So I only ended up doing 2 productions for the entire year, one being a commercial for a CrossFit gym, and the other was actually a really cool short documentary. That was more of like a passion project than anything. If you haven't seen that, you can check it out right here on my YouTube channel. I will put the link in the description. Again, my focus was not on full-scale productions, but it didn't mean that I was going to say no, you know, when the opportunity presented itself. I just made sure that the productions that I did take on were projects that I was really excited about, and essentially that I wanted to showcase to the world or put in my portfolio. Now, outside of these top 3 categories, there were a few more odds and ends that added to my total income, and that came in the form of voiceovers, which were about 5% of my total income. And last but not least, 1% of my income came from consulting and coaching, essentially helping people to learn editing, and then another 1% strictly from photography. Now, both of these were kind of one-off projects, definitely not something that I actively offered, but also, again, not something that I declined, given that these clients approached me and wanted to work with me for my expertise. One last thing to mention here is that when it comes to video editing, obviously the amount that I made is also determined on my project rates. And I had a decent blend of charging an entire project rate, so knowing exactly how many deliverables I needed and working with directors or companies within their budget to come up with a overall package price. And then other times I was working off of an hourly rate, especially when I was working with new clients, understanding kind of what they needed in their editing and seeing how long it took me off the bat, and then figuring out kind of like a longer term project rate or retainer rate or something like that from there. So again, how much I made is definitely, you know, going to be different from you depending on the rates that you charge, depending on whether you're strictly doing hourly, if you're strictly doing project rates. I feel like I don't have enough experience yet to really recommend one over the other. I kind of just use my own judgment to, you know, work with each individual client to find something that worked best for both of us. So that's just another thing to keep in mind when you're taking in all this information that I'm sharing with you. So that is going to be a wrap for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you some realistic insight into what you might expect in your first year as a freelancer. But again, this is just my personal journey, my personal experience, and I hope that yours is even better. Outside of that, a wholehearted thank you for watching this and for being here, and I will see you guys on the next one.